So the Batman is out, and of course you knew the relationship video was gonna be the first one I worked on. You already know my other name. It ain't Sin, it's Theseus, the shipper of ships. So one of the aspects that I really think Matt Reeves knocked out of the park is in regards to the relationship between Batman and Catwoman. And I love how essentially the relationship begins because we see a more broken, standoffish Batman where he's unwilling to trust and open himself up to the idea of having some level of an emotional attachment with another human being. He's fully invested in essentially being Batman. He doesn't give a shit about being Bruce Wayne. He doesn't care about mending his relationship with Alfred. It is all about going to the streets of Gotham and delivering justice and vengeance upon all of its criminals. Something changes. And I like the subtle way we get the build up to what we knew the end of the relationship was essentially going to be, which is he's watching Selina, which for those of you who aren't aware, a lot of the time Batman's on a rooftop somewhere watching you 4 hours to get your routine down so he can figure out where it is exactly it's the best time for him to snatch you up. And I like the fact that Matt Reeves kind of delves into the creepy factor of essentially having Batman prowl on a rooftop watching you as he tries to figure out what move you're about to make as he puts the puzzle pieces together. But there's something about Selina that captures his attention. Uh, Outside of the fact that Zoe Kravitz is absolutely fucking gorgeous and anyone would fall in love with her. But he's enamored by her. For the first time ever, he kind of has like this weird misstep where typically it's all brooding and anger, but when he sees her, something inside him kind of softens and he decides to follow her to the mayor's apartment and they get into a fight. And it's one of the things where like she's giving it her all and he's essentially kind of testing the waters to see what she's got. But when the police officer walks in, instead of, I don't know, knocking her out, handing her over to the GCPD, something, he pulls her to the side and he conceals them both from essentially the officer. This is when I think Selina took notice of him for the first time. Because for the most part, from Selina's perspective, she's a survivor. She's basically been surviving in Gotham since she was a child by herself. She's had to sell drugs, work in the Iceberg Lounge, beat the shit out of people who live in her surroundings who are drug dealers and rapists and molesters and murderers, hardened criminals, and know how to protect herself and her best friend. For the first time ever, there's someone who instinctively, without even thinking about what he's getting on this end, goes to essentially protect her. And he shields her. And for the first time ever, she kind of looks up at him like, oh, what is this? I wasn't expecting this from essentially a random stranger dressed like a bat in the middle of the night who's doing the same nocturnal activities that I am. And then the cat and mouse game essentially begins, where there's a level of banter between the both of them when she's undercover in the Iceberg Lounge that you don't see from Alfred. That's the first hint that he's beginning to open himself up to the idea of trusting someone. Then he has her photo in the Batcave and Alfred walks in, which is one of my favorite scenes ever, because Alfred walks in like that parent who's afraid that his child is just next level antisocial and will never in any way, shape, or form get a girlfriend or boyfriend. And he walks in and he sees Selina's picture on the monitor and he's like, who is this? Like, is this somebody new, somebody that you're interested in? Do you have a date? Are you going out on a date? Are you finally opening up yourself to the idea of being an extrovert and not just an introvert who beats the shit out of criminals around Gotham? And Bruce just immediately shuts it down and continues on his way. But the picture stays up and he's watching Selina, which later on, even after the investigation is over, another thing you notice is that he keeps the channel open that's connected to the eyes, just in case she decided to try and reach out to him and talk to him again. So when he looks at the channel and he sees the note, he immediately tries to essentially contact her and talk to her. But then there's the scene where she's stealing the money, and it almost feels as though it's not judgment coming from him, it's a level of disappointment until he hears her side of the story, and then he's like, holy shit. Let's go do the thing. And of course he's unable to go and do the thing, so she goes off on her own because she wants to kill Carmine Falcone. And he shows up and he stops her from doing it because he doesn't want to see her essentially basically turn into the monster that he's always been afraid that he'll turn into if he goes over the edge. Which so many good things that are just taken from the animated series with how Batman and Catwoman, because growing up in the 90s, we had Batman the animated series before we had Justice League, and the Batman in Batman the animated series, he'd talk to you. There were, early on in the animated series, he was very reserved and guarded in the way in which he dealt with criminals and the people around him. But as the series went on, you saw him open up himself to the concept and the idea of love, and Selina was definitely one of those that was up there. Riding through the entire movie, a lot of those emotions came back, because at the beginning of the movie, he's guarded and he's angry and he's pissed. And as the movie progresses, he opens himself up to the idea of having a normal relationship with someone, or at least trying to move towards a normal relationship with someone. And you see that he becomes emotionally invested in Selina, where he goes to the Iceberg Lounge in the daytime, takes off the entire Batman suit, goes in there and sneaks in there as Bruce Wayne. And that, well, I don't know how the Batman suit fits into that book bag. That book bag is a TARDIS. But he goes to the Iceberg Lounge to save her from herself, from stopping her from going over the edge and becoming essentially the same type of bastard that her father was. And you see the continuation of that when she saves his life, and he is just beaten, and he injects himself with the adrenaline, and he hops up and he just starts wailing away on the Riddler's henchmen. And he's not beating the henchmen the way in which he would have at the beginning of the movie, because at the beginning of the movie, that's just raw aggression, unfocused raw aggression towards a criminal. He is beating someone who almost hurt someone that he cares about, someone that he's developed emotions for. And it's absolutely fantastic. Love it. Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz did a fantastic job portraying the back and forth chemistry between Batman and Catwoman, where Batman is the hero, or he's developing into the hero that Gotham needs and deserves, whereas Catwoman, she's always more or less been the anti-hero, where she's for herself until Batman comes into the equation, and then he is just as important to her as herself. He's the only person in Gotham that she'd be willing to essentially throw away a big score for in order to save. And I love it. And I'm really hoping that we get to see more of them in the future going forward, because the Bat and Cat relationship is absolutely dope as hell. If you love the Bat and Cat relationship from Matt Reeves The Batman, comment down below, let me know, and I will catch you in the next one, because there's definitely going to be more. Peace.